The envelope wasn't addressed to a dead woman. It was addressed to me. For words underneath my name stopped my heart before I even opened it. Read this one alone. I'd been packing up her sewing box when I found it. Blue thread, a pair of old scissors, and an envelope that shouldn't have existed. My wife had been gone 4 years. I would have known that handwriting anywhere on this earth. I sat down right there on the closet floor because my legs weren't going to hold me standing. The letter was dated 11 days before she died. 11 days. I'd received every letter she left behind, right on schedule, for 4 straight years. A birthday, an anniversary, the day I retired. This one had never come. My name is Wallace Kinney. I'm 71. Retired shipping clerk, Charleston, South Carolina. And someone had been holding my wife's last words to me hostage for 4 years. I just didn't know yet who. I read the letter twice before I could even make myself understand what it said. Loretta wrote that she'd noticed something wrong with our investment accounts in her final months. Money moving in ways that didn't add up, transfers she didn't recognize, and that she suspected our son-in-law, Derek, was involved somehow. She wrote that she hadn't wanted to accuse him without proof, hadn't wanted to spend her last weeks fighting with family instead of loving them. But she asked me, in that careful, familiar handwriting, to please look closely at the accounts once she was gone, because something wasn't right, and she trusted me to find out what. She'd given this letter to our daughter, Paige, for years ago. I was holding it for the first time that Tuesday afternoon. My hands were shaking by the time I finished reading it a third time, and not from grief anymore. Something colder had settled into my chest, something that felt a lot like betrayal, though I didn't yet understand from who, or how deep it actually ran. I called Paige that same evening, trying to keep my voice steady, asking if she remembered her mother giving her any letters near the end that hadn't been delivered yet. There was a pause on the line, longer than it should have been. "Dad, why are you asking?" "I found one, Paige. In the sewing box. It says read this one alone." The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know before she said a single word. "Dad, I can explain." "Then explain." Another pause, heavier than the first. "I was going to give it to you eventually. I didn't know how. And then time kept passing, and it got harder, and I told myself it didn't matter anymore." "Paige, your mother wrote that letter because she thought something was wrong with our money. Something involving Derek." The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "I have to go, Dad," she finally said. "Can we talk about this tomorrow?" She hung up before I could answer. I sat in my kitchen a long time after that call ended, staring at Loretta's handwriting, wondering how many years I'd lost that I could have spent paying closer attention, if only I'd gotten this letter when she'd actually meant for me to have it. I called my old friend Gus the next morning, a man who'd spent 30 years as a financial advisor before retiring, the kind of friend who always knew exactly which questions actually mattered. "Wallace, you sound rattled," he said. "What's going on?" I told him everything. The letter, the 4-year delay, Loretta's suspicion about the accounts. Gus went quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that told me whatever he was thinking wasn't good news. "Wallace, if Loretta noticed something wrong before she passed, and nobody ever looked into it, for years is a long time for a problem like that to keep growing unchecked." He offered to help me pull the full history on our old joint investment account, the one Derek had started helping manage not long after Loretta got sick, back when I'd been too overwhelmed with her care to keep up with paperwork myself. I agreed immediately. It took 3 days for the full statements to come through. 3 of the longest days I'd had since the funeral itself, spent replaying every conversation with Derek over the past 4 years, searching for anything that had felt wrong at the time, but that I'd been too grateful for his help to question closely. When the statements finally arrived, Gus spread them across my kitchen table, and what he found made my stomach drop clean through the floor. Over 4 years, more than $80,000 had moved out of that account in transfers labeled vaguely as investment reallocation, moved into a separate account that had nothing to do with any investment firm at all. "Wallace," Gus said quietly, "I think you need a lawyer for this, not just me." I asked him why. "Because this isn't a mistake pattern. This is a system. Someone's been doing this carefully for years, and doing it well enough that nobody noticed." Gus connected me that same afternoon with an attorney he trusted, a sharp, careful woman named Renata Suarez, who reviewed everything within the hour. "Mr. Kinney, this is serious. Someone with access to your accounts has been systematically moving funds out over an extended period. But before we do anything, I need to understand exactly how much your daughter knows and how much she's been protecting. That question sat heavy in my chest the rest of that day. Renata suggested I not confront Derek directly yet, not until we understood the full scope of what had actually happened. It was one of the hardest things I've ever agreed to, sitting through an awkward, careful dinner with Paige and Derek 2 days later, watching him laugh at his own jokes across my table, while $80,000 of stolen retirement money sat documented in a file folder on Renata's desk. Paige barely spoke that whole dinner. I noticed, though I said nothing. Afterward, once Derek had stepped outside to take a call, Paige sat back down across from me, her eyes red before she even said a word. "Dad, I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you say anything." I nodded, my chest tight. I found that letter 3 days after Mom died. I read it, and I confronted Derek about it that same week. My stomach turned over slowly. He told me Mom was confused near the end, that the medication made her paranoid about things that weren't really happening. I wanted to believe him so badly, Dad. I was drowning in grief, and he was the only steady thing I had left, and I let myself believe whatever kept things simple. "So you hid the letter." "I hid the letter," she said, her voice breaking completely. And every year that passed, it got harder to imagine handing it over, because handing it over meant admitting I'd chosen not to look closely at my own husband for 4 straight years. I didn't say anything for a long moment, just sat there letting that settle between us, grief and anger tangled together in a way I didn't have clean words for yet. "Paige, your mother trusted you with the truth. She trusted both of us." "I know," she whispered. "I know, Dad. I've known for years, and I didn't know how to fix it without breaking everything." Renata, once I told her about Paige's confession, suggested something I hadn't expected. Rather than treating Paige as part of the investigation, she recommended we quietly gather one more piece of proof directly from Derek himself, with Paige's help this time instead of her silence. Paige agreed without hesitation. 2 nights later, Derek came home to find Paige waiting for him at the kitchen table, a small recorder tucked inside an old radio on the counter, the same counter where Loretta used to make Sunday breakfast for all of us. "I know about the letter," Paige said, her voice steadier than I expected. "I know about the transfers. I need you to tell me the truth right now, Derek, all of it." There was a long pause before he answered. "It started small," he finally said. "A few thousand here and there, when the business was struggling those first 2 years. I always meant to pay it back. Then it just became easier not to." $80,000 easier? Paige asked, her voice cracking. "I know how it sounds." "Loretta knew," Paige said quietly. "She wrote Dad a letter about it before she died, and I hid it from him because I didn't want to believe you'd do something like that to my own father." Derek was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not proud of any of this, Paige. I kept telling myself I'd fix it before anyone noticed." "Someone already noticed," Paige said. "For years ago. I just didn't listen." Renata had that recording, along with the full transaction history, filed with local authorities within the week. Given the clear, sustained pattern of the transfers and Derek's own recorded admission, the case moved forward quickly, without the drawn-out fight I'd braced myself for. Derek was charged with financial exploitation of an elder and fraud. He pled guilty, cooperating fully once confronted with the recording, and received several years of probation along with a structured restitution plan for the full amount, monitored directly by the court rather than left in anyone's individual hands this time. Paige and Derek separated not long after everything came out, though she's told me, more than once, that hiding that letter is the piece of this whole ordeal she regrets most, more than the money itself, more than anything Derek actually did. It's been almost a year now. Paige and I talk most days, careful conversations that carry a different kind of honesty than we managed before all this, the kind that only comes after you've both stood in the wreckage of what silence can cost. Last month, going through the last of the boxes from that closet, I found one more letter tucked into the lining of Loretta's old sewing box, one Paige never even knew existed. This one wasn't about money at all. It simply said she loved us both, that she trusted us to take care of each other once she was gone, and that whatever happened, she hoped we'd always find our way back to the truth eventually, even if it took longer than either of us wanted. I read it out loud to Paige on my porch that evening, both of us crying by the end of it, And for the first time in a long while, it felt less like grief and more like Loretta was still somehow taking care of us both, exactly the way she always had. If this story got to you, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.